Hello and welcome to the first in a series of tutorials that are designed to introduce you to programming, specifically Java programming. And specifically, we're going to be using a certain tool, a development environment called NetBeans. Now, these are not standalone videos. They will help anyone, but they are meant to go hand in hand with some lessons that are being provided in a class setting. So programming essentially is creating a sequence of instructions for the computer to allow it to process and manipulate information. Any kind of program that you've ever used, a video game or an app or the YouTube that you might be watching right now, all is designed in order to take information and to manipulate it and then present it in some final way. And programming can be done in many different languages, in many different environments, and Java is just one of those tools. Some other popular tools right now, C#, Python, C++, they're all tools that are essentially designed to do the same thing. It's just some work better in different environments or for different uses, and you'll see that it's quite a heated debate as to which is the best programming language. For today, I'm going to just introduce the development environment a little bit, NetBeans, and I'm going to talk about just some overall programming concepts that are relevant to Java. You may see that I'll be writing some code today, and I don't expect you to understand that code. I'm just going to use it to highlight certain parts of programming and programming languages. So when you open NetBeans, this is the view that you're going to get. Now, NetBeans is just what's called a development environment. It's actually called an integrated development environment, which is just a fancy word for saying that it's a spot where we can do our coding that has some tools and useful features that will hopefully make coding easier. There are other development environments such as Eclipse, and there are online development environments such as REPL. This one's going to take place in NetBeans, this series of videos, but you could easily translate it into other development environments. The only other thing I wanted to say is that this introduction and the videos that I'm going to use as an introduction do use a custom class that we have just to make learning the beginning of Java easier. But as we go through the videos, you're going to see we're going to start to get rid of that crutch and learn some of the more native Java commands. So at any rate, this is the NetBeans environment, and one of the first things we want to do is to create a project. So you're going to see that when you want to write a program, there's usually a hierarchy associated with that particular program. And in the case of NetBeans, the work that you do takes place inside a project. So the project is going to contain all of the programs and all of the files and all of the images and things that are related to the program that you're writing. So think of a video game. All of the different parts related to that video game might take place inside that project. So in order to create that project, we're going to go File, and we're going to go to New Project. In this case, for my class, we have a special type of project, which is to help us learn to program. If you're doing this on your own and you don't have this, then you might just create a regular Java application. So we're going to click Next, and we're going to give this project a name, some sort of meaningful name to describe your project. Our first programming project. You'll notice that it's going to create a folder on your computer, usually in your documents area, that's going to hold all of the information related to that project. So if you ever need to get access to it, that's where you're going to go. So we're going to finish now, and it's going to create our whole little project environment where we're going to do our coding. And so as I go through here and start to click down, you're going to see a lot of stuff, a bit of a hierarchy. This first step in the hierarchy is our project. And as we move down in Java, there's this concept of a package. And a package is just used to group related programs together. So when you think of a game, there might be different parts of that game. There might be a part that's going to keep track of the enemies and the enemy movement. There might be another part that keeps track of the environment and environment variables. You might make different packages that are going to have related programs inside those packages. Right now we just have one. And to be honest, for most beginners as they're learning to program, you're never going to go beyond just that one package. We go down one more level and we have the actual program. Programs in Java follow a certain convention. They always start with an uppercase letter, and you'll notice they use something called camel case, which is that every word is going to be capitalized, the beginning of every word, and then everything else is underscores. There are no spaces allowed in projects, and you'll notice that the extension is called .java, and that just identifies this as a Java program. So I can double click in this and it will open up our very first program. And when you look at this program, you're going to notice a couple of things. You're going to notice that our package is identified here to say, yep, this program belongs in this particular package. You're going to see a lot of imports, and an import is basically bringing in other programs that other people have written to help you, right? So there's a lot of programs that are native to Java, things to help you with math, things to help you get information from the keyboard or put information out to the screen. And then there's tons of programs that other people have written, and you're able to take all of those and bring them into your code so that you can use them. And that's what importing is called. So you can see this program imports a few useful tools for beginners. There's something here to do with robotics that was written by an awesome professor in Canada. And then there's HSA, which was also written as sort of a helper class and area. The next thing that you're going to see down here is the name of our program. This name is going to correspond to the name of the program up here. They have to be the same. These other identifiers I'm going to explain at a later date, but some of them I think you can understand. Public means that you are writing a program that anybody can use. And this keyword class has to do with the fact that Java is what's called an object-oriented program. So every program that you write is actually called a class. And later on it's going to be really exciting. You're going to see how that will fit in to the bigger picture of programming. So this is your program, but every program needs a starting point. You know, when you press run, or when you go onto Windows or and click to run a program, that program has to have a starting point. And so in Java, every single program will have what's called a main method, and that is just identifying that this is where the program is starting. You don't need to tell it to go here. It's automatically going to go to this particular spot. And the syntax, which means that the way you write this line has to be exact. If you're off, if you miss a word, or you make something uppercase or lowercase here or here, it's not going to run. You're going to notice some things you already know. Public, obviously, if you want to run it when you run the program, it has to be public. And you'll see a few other keywords that we're going to get into more in a later lesson. The important point here is that everything you're going to do as far as writing a program as you start to learn is going to take place inside this main method. And these programs are going to be run in order. All of the lines of code that you run here are sort of run in order. And you have ways to loop, and you have ways to make decisions, but the code you're going to write is all going to take place at the beginning inside this main method. So this is your development environment. You can see that there's already one line of code here, and this line of code actually is just going to open up a window for us to allow us to do things. And so we could potentially run this program just as it is, and you'll see down here it's running. It's going to give you some messages as it goes through, and it's going to pop up a window with nothing inside it. So a couple of tidbits in NetBeans. This is specific to NetBeans. Is that if you want to run a program, we can right-click it, and we can say Run File. You can see that we can do Shift F6 as well. And you'll also see that there's a run command up here. Although that run command can be a little bit tricky because it's going to run the whole project. And if you end up having multiple programs inside here, then it will choose one by default, which might not be the one that you're currently in. So I just like to use Shift F6 as a quick shortcut to run it. So let's imagine you wanted to run a separate program. You wanted to create a separate program. I could come up here to my package or to my project, and I could right click and I could say new, and I could create a Java class. Or if you're in my class, you will go to other and you will select an ICS3 Java. Again, you have to give that class a name. Remember what we said about camel casing. Another program. Okay, capital, capital. We're going to finish. And you'll see it here. Again, everything is there's your console. And there's another way of printing things out to the screen. So the other thing I want to cover in this video before we're done, and we're almost done, is just talking about errors. As you start to write code, there are going to be errors that crop up. And some errors are called syntax errors, which means you have made a mistake in the typing of your code. So just to give you an example, if I were to change something like this, right away NetBeans is going to come and say, oh look, there's some sort of an error, some mistake has been made in the actual syntax or the formatting of that command. And I can come over to the left and it's going to tell me that this package, this thing, doesn't exist that I'm trying to use. And so I'm going to have to fix that before I can run the program. I can't run it when there's actual syntax errors. Think about it like misspelled words in an essay. So I can fix that, and then I can go ahead and run it. The other types of errors that can occur are much trickier, and there are things called semantic or logic errors. And those are things where the code will run happily, but it's not going to do what you intended it to do. Right? So for example, I could say add 1 plus 2. And in my code here, I could say 1 plus 3. That's perfectly valid. If I wrote the syntax properly, Java would happily run it, but it's not going to give me the answer that I wanted because some sort of a logical mistake was made. Those are much more difficult to catch. And I'll give you some tips and tricks in a later lesson on how to catch those types of errors. The last thing that I want to tell you, which is super important, is about commenting. So my suggestion always to my classes is that before you even start trying to code, the very first thing that you do is you make a plan. And there'll be a whole other lesson on how to make a plan, because honestly, a good coder, a good programmer, is also a good problem solver. So we'll talk about how to make plans to solve problems. But you should always comment your code even before you start to write it. And what that means is describe what your code is going to do. And there are two ways to add that description to Java, and they're called comments. And one way is by using these 2 slashes. Anything that I write inside these 2 slashes are going to be ignored when the program runs. They're just there to add commentary to the program. And so you can write commentary like read into numbers from the keyboard, add them together, output the result. Notice that you don't even need to know how to program at this point. You know what this program is going to do. And that's why it's always valuable to put in those comments, to put in that plan first. And then you can literally go back and fill in those blanks with the syntax as you start to learn them in the course. Because everybody that's listening to this knows how to add 2 numbers together. You just don't know how to do it in Java yet. So as I start to give problems and suggestions during my videos and in class, I strongly suggest that you follow through and comment your code first. I know many professors and many teachers won't even help students unless they see that plan in your code and that it's well commented. I did say there was another way to make comments, and that is using this type of syntax. And this is called a multi-line comment, because not only is it just what's in the line that's commented, but it's everything in between this and this. So I can have as many lines as I want, and it will be completely ignored by the program. So that's it for today. Keep it nice and short. Today was meant to introduce you to what programming is, some of the errors that occur, the importance of commenting, and how the environment works, the idea of projects and packages and classes, which are your programs. The next thing we're going to look at is basic input and output, which is how to get stuff in from the keyboard and how to output stuff to the screen. Remember, these videos aren't self-contained. There are some lessons that go with them, and those lessons will offer complementary information, but also additional information. So please make sure you check those out as well. Take care.